Hey, what's going on, Trojan family? Welcome to the USC LAFB show, or the Salute to Troy show, whatever you want to call us. We are here for all your USC Trojan needs. Talking USC versus Michigan State, ninth meeting between two historic programs. I think it's the fifth time Michigan State will be at the Collie here on the West Coast. So previewing this game, 8 p.m. kickoff, a nice late one, Madman. But first and foremost, great to see you. How are you doing on a rainy Thursday?
Yeah, no, great to see you as well, Rye. I mean, we don't have seasons in LA anymore, my goodness. So a rainy Thursday. I think weather calls for some more rain on Friday, but hopefully things clear up by Saturday and by kickoff, certainly. But yeah, excited as always, brother, to jump in with you and preview this game. Hard to believe that after Saturday, we're a third of the way through the regular season, 4 out of 12 games. So time is really flying, and this is probably the last of the games where we're feeling really good in terms of kind of a talent discrepancy before that gauntlet begins from next week at Illinois. So thrilled to jump in with you and dive into this contest.
Yeah, it's always a bummer. Like, college football goes by so much faster than the NFL season, because I mean it's done before December. Like, end of November is the end of the season, and then obviously if you're in the playoff, you get more, or you have your bowl game a month later. But yeah, it flies by. So yeah, crazy. Already almost a quarter way through. But yeah, this matchup is it should be a fun one. It's still going to be a challenge, obviously. Big Ten matchup. It helps that it's at home. Hopefully, it's a packed Coliseum. Quickly, what's your thoughts on, like, I think it's great that the team has really made a conscious effort, kind of pushing, like, hey, we want to fill this place up. We know it's 8 p.m. kickoff. A lot of diehard fans have kind of been asking the university to make a bigger push. Like, opposing fans will see it as they see it, like, oh, look at them begging fans to go. But I think we all know that that's kind of what you have to do in this town. But what's your thoughts on kind of, Lincoln Riley, Jen Cohen, the players, the staff really making a big effort to, like, get fans out there this Saturday?
No, I think it's great. It really sort of connects the Trojan family in even deeper way. And I love the language around the note from the athletic department earlier this week, just how they frame things, in terms of students, sort of, being the spear, and, the season ticket holders being the backbone. And it was just lovely language in terms of how they're trying to engage everyone. And I think it's really important. Look, it's an 8 p.m. kickoff. LA is a tough town to get around, particularly on a Saturday night with all the traffic. But, I love the conscious effort. Mayava, had sort of an outreach to students. So I think this just feeling of we're all in this together is what makes this so special. And football is so central to what it means to be a USC Trojan and be part of that ecosystem, that it's a special time. To your point, Ryan, I mean, only 6 or 7 times a year do you get a football Saturday in the Coliseum where you really feel the Trojan family in such a tangible, visceral way. So I think it's great that they're reaching out, and hopefully the Collie is going to be packed, and we're going to give Michigan State some hell there in terms of crowd support.
Yeah, should be a great time. We'll be there, obviously. And then again, last thing before kind of getting into the full-on preview, but one of the better mascot matchups,
yes,
Madman, in college football, that, like I said, it's only the 9th time meeting, but Trojans versus the Spartans, obviously tons of historical context there. We know, unfortunately, in the historical context, the Trojans didn't come out on top at the end of the day, but obviously some great tactics were used and whatnot, and such a fun matchup. So my question for you, I've seen fans put this out there, like, there needs to be some sort of trophy for this game, I think, moving forward, since this will be a Big Ten matchup, maybe not every single year, but often. But I've seen, like, a Trojan horse replica or something. What would you want as, like, a true trophy for this matchup that we could start, creating this rivalry a little bit more moving forward?
Totally. I mean, it has to be some sort of an ode to sort of like the Greco-Roman War, don't you think? I mean, when you're talking about Trojans and Spartans, it's just absolutely significant there. I envision, first of all, I think this has to be a trophy game just because of the uniqueness of the mascots as well as the colors. This is one of those kind of color games too.
Yeah.
You see the white and green and the cardinal and gold. And so, the pageantry of college football is on full display here Saturday night, given the mascots and the colors. But I think it's got to be some kind of split helmet. You got, a Spartan helmet on one side and a Trojan helmet on the right side. It's kind of a split helmet trophy would be really, really special. And particularly, this is the time to start thinking about some new traditions. We've talked about it at length that, the weekender is no more. You don't have that trip up to Cal or Stanford. We've talked a ton about the future of the Notre Dame game. And so this is really an opportunity potentially to build some new traditions, some new rivalries. And what a great way to do it than here. I really think both athletic departments need to put their heads together and really think through this.
Yeah. It probably wouldn't be politically correct, Madman, now in 2025, but maybe like Helen of Troy is the trophy. Like that's
yep.
Since that's totally what the war was over to begin with, right?
Right.
So anyway, so looking at this game, well, quickly let's talk about our good friends over at Sleeper. We'll pay the bills here. So Sleeper, number one sports app right now in all of the land. You can go to the Google Store or the Apple App Store. Download today. You get live game updates. There's a chat feature, so you can chat with other fans in there. Plus, obviously, season-long fantasy leagues. You're not involved with that. But what we like the most is the daily game pick'ems that you can do. You pick 2 to 8 players, just choose more or less. So for this game, Michigan State, USC, you'll have the option of choosing Jaden Mayava, his yardage total. I'm going to guess he's probably, we'll probably do some over and unders here, but I'm going to guess he's in that like 265 range. So more or less. They usually don't update the college ones till like the day before. So we'll see what those updates fully are. But so you just choose more or less 2 to 8 players and you can win real money. So when you download the app, make sure to use our promo code USC LAFB, all one word, USC LAFB. You'll get a match bonus up to $100. You put in $100, you get $100 free to play with. You can put in just 10 if you want to start small. You're going to get a free $10 to play with. So an extra bonus there for your first matchup. So download the Sleeper app today. Tell them the guys over at the LAFB Network sent you. Make sure you use that promo code USC LAFB. All right, Madman. So let's talk USC first. I know I unfortunately missed the call-in show last night. Thank you for handling. I'm sure it was a great show. So I'm sure you talked about some of this last night, so we won't belabor it too much. But obviously, injuries to Chasen Johnson, done for the season. Obviously, Prophet Brown's not back yet. Alex Graham, maybe we'll hear more tomorrow during Lincoln Riley's presser if there's any update there, but I'm going to guess probably unlikely. So secondary, very banged up. Zacharias Williams, still going to miss probably a few weeks, Lincoln Riley said, in the receiver department. Prince Strawn, we don't know for sure. He's probably still questionable. So I'll just ask you this. Are you concerned at all about these injuries? Do you think we've seen enough depth and, like you mentioned, the talent discrepancy that the Trojans still be okay in the injury department on this one?
Yeah, Ryan. I mean, I'm not concerned on the wide receiver side of things, especially with the emergence of Tanook Hines and, as wide receiver 3, and then you got the big 2 up in front of him. So, this was a very deep wide receiver room to begin with, and I think there's a pretty clear 1, 2, 3 pecking order there. So not at all concerned from a wide receiver perspective. Where I am concerned, Ryan, and not necessarily for this game, and we'll get into sort of why, but I think the secondary now, when you talk about Prophet Brown going down and now Chasen Johnson, who is going to be that other outside corner outside of DeCarlos Nicholson, right? And we've talked about Conley, we've talked about Marcellus Williams, we've talked about DJ Harvey. It really feels like a 3-horse race now as we get into Big Ten season of who's really going to emerge there on the outside. And I think clarity there and consistency there is going to be very important as we progress into Illinois next week, and then Michigan the week after, and then beyond. So I think what I'm really looking for is one of those 3 guys stepping up Saturday night and really separating where, you have an established, 2 on the outside and you can sort of go from there. So again, not necessarily a concern for Saturday night, and we'll get into why, because Michigan State's got some injuries on their end and some questionable things. But if this was a fully healthy Michigan State team, Ryan, I'd be more concerned given a couple of the weapons that they have on the outside. But this is just something we have to correct now moving forward. It was a very uneven secondary performance against Purdue. A lot of soft coverage, a lot of giving up inside leverage. Now, part of that was the great pass rush that we were able to generate on the edges. And when you just don't have time to throw as a quarterback, you're not going to be able to throw it deep. And so you're sort of baiting a lot of underneath stuff at times. And then, anticipating that an opposing team isn't going to be able to put 12, 13 plays together without a negative play, without a sack, without a penalty, without something going wrong. But I just don't think that's a recipe that you can sustain in the longer term. And furthermore, our corners were kind of consistently getting beat on the inside. So solidifying that second corner spot is going to be key for me and something that I'm looking for. Again, I don't think it's going to impact the outcome of Saturday night, but it certainly is going to impact the trajectory of this 2025 season.
Yeah, completely agree. Obviously, we need to see the secondary improve. And, if it's me, obviously, I think there will always be some pseudo rotation. That's just the way Dan Lynn's going to run this defense. But, we probably don't want it to be 11 or 12 guys consistently going in and out. So having a couple, and to me right now, I think Braylon Conley should be that second starter outside of DeCarlos Nicholson. And then with Marcellus Williams as the primary rotational piece. I know a lot of fans hate seeing Kamari Ramsey in the nickel. They want to see him back at safety. But I've said this before, like Christian Pierce and Bishop Fitzgerald, I think, are good safety options. Ramsey, obviously, I think would be the best one. But with Alex Graham still hurt, with Prophet Brown out, with the injury stacking up at nickel, like I think Kamari Ramsey is just so much better than what would be there instead, which what we've seen is Kevin Longstreet has been kind of the backup nickel guy. So you have to look at who's better at what position, regardless if it's not his best position. If he's still better than everyone else, that's how it's going to stay until, Graham hopefully is healthy. So to me, I see it as, Nicholson, Ramsey, and Conley within Marcellus Williams as your primary rotation guy in. And then obviously we'll still see DJ Harvey as he hopefully improves in this defense and gets the system down. And Madman, I think what we can talk about now in terms of matchup, and you kind of mentioned it there, is, the best way to help your secondary out is with this pass rush. And obviously it looked dominant last week. We've seen all the clips out there of all the holdings that went uncalled. And I think everyone just needs to accept that's what's going to happen with USC in the Big Ten. But when you look specifically at Michigan State, and QB Aiden Chili's, shout out Long Beach native, former SoCal, so making his homecoming here in Southern California. But when under pressure, so far this season, he's been pressured 32 times, which is the third worst in the Big Ten. When under pressure, he has a 34 pass grade, which is the third worst. 3 turnover-worthy passes, which is the second worst. 25% pressure to sack percentage, which is the third worst, and a 56.3 adjusted completion percentage, which is the fourth worst. So data doesn't tell you the entire story, but it tells you a good snippet, and it tells you that they just need to get after Aiden Chili's and the rest will take care of itself. Your thoughts on that and how the pass rush can do that?
Yeah, no, absolutely, Ryan. It's and is it Chili's or is it Childs? I've heard both, but we'll roll with
might be Childs.
And I think what's interesting here, Ryan, is they're without their starting right guard, so that's a significant injury for them. Luka Vincic is going to be out for a foreseeable amount, but even with Vincic, this was an offensive line that's been patchwork for the most part. And I think what's been alarming is all the stats that you rattled off there in terms of pressure rate and win rate off of pressures. And Childs' sort of completion percentage when under pressure. Look at the schedule that they played these first 3 games, right? I mean, again, kind of a similar schedule to USC in the sense that no murderer's row there. I mean, when you're talking about Western Michigan, you're talking about Youngstown State, and you're talking about Boston College, to go through those 3 teams and struggle in pass coverage is very, very alarming. And when you talk about Childs getting 8 sacks over the first 3 games, this is going to be a significant challenge for Michigan State to hold off this USC pass rush. I mean, we love Fountain and we love Shelby and we love Lucas. These guys are going to turn it loose, particularly on the interior. I think the one wild card could be with Michigan State. This is the first time USC is going to be playing a mobile quarterback. Childs is their second leading receiver on the year. Their second leading rusher on the year. Their leading rusher might be out in this game, running back Frazier. And so, they're going to have to rely on Childs' legs even more. And so I think sometimes, where Michigan State could find some gaps and some openings here is if SC just sort of pins its ears back and just goes for the quarterback, which what they've done the first 3 weeks. But if you lose a little bit of gap contain and, you sort of go a little bit too much upstream on the edges on the rush, Childs can kind of step up and then just take off and run. And I think that's going to be part of Michigan State's game plan, is that, look, if you're feeling that pressure right away, just take off and run. And so I think that's going to be a little bit of a cat and mouse game. But I fully expect, Ryan, our edge players to be sort of living in the Michigan State backfield, because if they're struggling against the likes of Youngstown State and the likes of Western Michigan, this is going to be a long night for this offensive line of Michigan State.
Yeah, and I did a quick Google search with AI, and according to that, it's Cheelz is how it's pronounced.
Cheelz, okay.
Cheelz is the pronunciation, but
okay.
Again, this is a AI answer, so apologies. I always want to try to get these names right, but apologies.
Totally.
So I think Aiden Cheelz. But no, totally agree. I mean, he is extremely mobile, obviously, and has that versatility to him. So it's going to be interesting to see how Dan Lynn, how Rob Ryan utilized the linebackers to kind of, whether it's a QB spy or keeping him in space, or if we'll see a little bit more base out of this with 3 linebackers out there. Obviously, how well Jaden Walker's played and just pairing him with Desmond Stevens and Eric Gentry to kind of add that extra layer to keep Cheelz honest. So
this could also, Ryan, to be honest with you, this could be an unlock game for Stevens, to your point. We've sort of been waiting for him to sort of make that next step. I think all indications have been, he's in his head a little bit. He's still a young player. He's still building that experience. I think a lot for him to process right now. If he comes in to be Cheelz' spy, that sort of simplifies the game for him. He can just sort of say, hey, you've got one job, and that's to keep the Michigan State quarterback contained here. And, wherever he goes, you go. And we could see a situation here with Stevens, because it's a more simplified game plan for him personally. We can start seeing the Stevens that we've grown to know and love in 2024.
Yeah, I mean, it'd be great. I would just love to see this defense. Things are going to happen. I think Michigan State has a good enough offense to make some things happen. But to see this defense clamp down in certain situations, not just give up the easy passes over and over, and if Stevens can be that guy that really keeps their quarterback in check, I think that'll be awesome to see. So, how many? I'm gonna put you on the spot. How many sacks think the Trojans get? I mean, they've been doing good in the sack department so far.
I'm gonna go with 5.
Ooh, love it. That'd be great.
I'm gonna go with 5. This is a patchwork, offensive line with Michigan State, and the one thing with Cheelz is it's going to be a little bit more feast or famine. He's a guy that holds on to the ball a little bit longer, Ryan. Mm-hmm. And so there's going to be moments there where he's going to kind of keep the play alive. And in some cases, it may work out for him because he may find an opening. There might be a bust on the back end. But in a lot of cases, I could see some big sacks, loss of 12, loss of 14. He's a guy that tends to hold on to the ball a little bit too long. He doesn't know when to kind of give up on a play. Those instincts are still coming along. So I like SC to get 5 sacks in this game. And, there'll be some wins and some losses there. But I think when this line wins, I have a feeling it's going to win big.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I love that. 5 sacks would be great. And Cam Fountain's obviously been dominant. Anthony Lucas has been dominant. We've seen the interior guys be dominant. So we'll see what those pressures can allude to. And if we can keep this turnover streak going as well, which, obviously the pressure has been a huge factor for that. Shifting over to the offense and Jade Maiava, this Michigan State defense is a team that, in their first week against Western Michigan only gave up 6 points, but then gave up 40 in that overtime win to Boston College. And just last week, as you kind of alluded to a Youngstown State team, gave up 24 points. So just based on that, obviously there's a lot more that goes into it, but USC offense should be able to move the ball fairly well and hopefully can convert some red zone opportunities to touchdowns instead of field goals like they did last week against Purdue. So what are you expecting in terms of pass versus rush in this game? Do you see more of a Jaden Maiava-led passing game, or kind of like last week where they did lean on the run a lot more than we've seen in recent years?
Yeah, no, absolutely, Ryan. I think what's been interesting about Michigan State, I think the one more credible data point, let's call it, I think is that game against Boston College, where they gave up 40 at home, had to go into overtime, just won on that 2-point conversion. Let's not forget the week after, Ryan, last week, Boston College lost to Stanford, and Stanford's no disrespect. I mean, I'm an alum of Stanford. I love Stanford. Stanford's a 2-3 win football team this year, and so, and they had 20 points, Boston College did, and were kind of shut down for a lot of that game. So when you sort of assess that, Boston College had 457 yards total offense against Michigan State 2 weeks ago. And it's not like Boston College was able to necessarily run the ball very effectively. They had 380 plus yards passing in that game. So they were very one-dimensional in that game and still found a way to stay in the game and almost pull it out at the end. And so I think there's some questions about this Michigan State pass defense. And then when you sort of put in the combination of Lemon and Lane, that just seems like a matchup, prime for exploitation on the USC side. So as much as I would love to see the balance continue, and I think now Lincoln Riley, after last week, hopefully feels more comfortable doing that moving forward. I think this is a game, particularly back at home, you've got a team that's kind of struggling in terms of pass defense. I don't quite see this game being, a 50-50 game. This is going to be more 60-40, perhaps even 65-35 through the air. And I see a heavy dose of Lane and Lemon and Mayava getting the ball out quickly.
Yeah, totally. I mean, Youngstown State had 242 yards passing to I think 97 or just under 100 rushing. So obviously they were much more successful through the air. And if I'm Lincoln Riley and knowing his history, he's chomping at the bit like, oh man, we got to just pass the ball a ton because that's what the defense is going to give us. So I see a big game from Mayava and the Lemonade pairing. And this is, I think, a game, obviously no touchdowns or no passing touchdowns for Mayava last week. I think he certainly changes that this week. I could see 300 plus passing yards come to him I don't want to sound disrespectful, but I think pretty easily in this one, especially with those two. And maybe we see Tanick Hines get his first official touchdown after almost having that Herculean catch last week. How do you see the tight end play continue? I think that's been one of the real bright spots of this offense is the usage, and we've talked about it before, but the usage of Lake McCree and Walker Lyons, sometimes as decoys and sometimes as just as extra blockers. We've seen a lot more 12 personnel. I think that's been the fun maturation of this offense is seeing two tight end sets, two running back sets, where it felt like the last 2 years, it was just five wide. Like we just had five wide with the running back in the backfield. And so seeing so many different looks, I think has been a real positive. And obviously when you go into more stiffer competition, it gives you more options. But these tight ends have been highly involved and they've had critical catches in situations. So I guess I'll phrase it like this to you. Who has a bigger game in terms of production, Lake McCree or Walker Lyons?
Yeah, no, great question. And we talked a little bit about this last night, right, on the call-in. I really like Lake McCree in this game as having bigger production for a couple of reasons. One is, that he's really found something with that seam. And, he found it last year with Miller Moss, and he continues to find it here with Mayava. And I think so much of the conversation this year about Mayava has been his demeanor, his calm, his composure, his confidence up to this point in the season. But as you and I both know, this is a long season. There's going to be ebbs and flows. Yep. He's going to have dips. He's going to have highs. He's going to make mistakes. And I think that outlet to Lake McCree, particularly in the seam, as well as on weak side kind of crossing routes and going to the weak side, I think is going to be a very calming influence for him over the course of the season, where he can, if he's 2-3 bad, throws in a row, maybe a pick on the last drive, you come back, you find McCree, you restabilize, you're back in rhythm. And so I think that McCree is set up very nicely to not just have a big game against Michigan State with the weakness of that pass defense, but also just have a really big year. And I think McCree is going to be that guy that really emerges and separates. Now, I think they both do a phenomenal job in blocking, as you mentioned, but also those fourth down and short packages. We've seen a lot there. We've seen McCree in the flat. We've seen Walker Lyons in the flat. And I think that's where Lyons, as sort of a change of pace, is going to come in and make some plays. He's so athletic. And, from an athleticism standpoint, next year, it's not even that there's a dip. You're probably going to enhance in terms of athleticism at the tight end position. So really exciting prospect there. But I like McCree to have a significantly bigger game against Michigan State and also a significantly bigger year given just the fit with Mayava.
Yeah, no, I agree. And just based on what we've seen through 3 weeks, and you alluded to it, obviously, but we've seen McCree's usage a lot more in those deeper seams, deeper passes, and Walker Lyons has seemingly been kind of resorted to those, as you mentioned, on the fourth downs, those quick little tosses. He has a touchdown, obviously, on that same exact play. It's been unstoppable on short yardage situations they needed, especially on fourth down conversions. So he's been much more active in that. McCree's been much more as like kind of the seam guy and the deeper route tree so far. We'll see if that changed, but that's what it's looked like through 3 weeks. But I think the usage from the tight ends has been a breath of fresh air for everyone. That, and then just the different looks on offense have been great. So, this Michigan State defense, I think, has some talent, but I do think they're going to be overmatched with, they lost a lot in the transfer portal last year. And I think this USC offense right now is really just building up to be better and better. And with how good Mayaba's looked and whatnot, and being back at home, I think will be huge. So USC is Madman an 18.5-point favorite. The over-under is set at 56. I think basically any USC game up until I'm proven otherwise, I think you can take the over. But how are you feeling about that spread? They didn't quite cover last week. Had a good game, good victory, double-digit margin victory, but weren't able to cover the 20.5-point spread. Do they cover the 18.5 on Saturday?
I think they do, right? I think, again, combination of being at home, and this is where we've talked so much in the previous few months, even the previous few years, about implications of cross-country road trips, right? And we've been on the short end of things, so many times here over the last 15, 18 months. But this is one where we get an advantage. I mean, you got a Michigan State team coming cross-country, 8 p.m. start time. I mean, it's going to be basically 11 p.m. for them. The circadian rhythm is way off. It's very hard to prepare for a 10 p.m., 11 p.m. kickoff, in terms of from where you're from. So I think they may be a little bit sluggish over the course of this game. SC's at home. Michigan State's weaknesses on defense are SC's strengths on offense. I think it sort of lines up very nicely. Now, I will say that I think Michigan State has some athletes on the offensive side of the ball. I think they're going to make some noise offensively. I think the injuries, though, to Mekhi Frazier, their leading rusher, and Nick Marsh, he's a game time decision, but they're, no leading rusher, no leading receiver, Ryan. That is potentially what you're going to see going on the road, late start. I think this has all the makings for SC to be able to win and score comfortably here. I really like SC to come out on top 41-20.
Nice. Yeah. If last week had kind of all the odd things happen against USC, I agree with you. This week's the complete opposite in terms of just the timing and the game start. So, as long as they're able to contain Shields and not let him go off with his legs and force him to pass the football, keep him honest, then I do think this defense shows some improvement throughout this game. And I do think the offense is just going to not have their way necessarily, but I think they're going to be able to move the football pretty well as long as they don't beat themselves. So I will go 48-17 with my prediction. So close, touching, flirting with 50s again. I mean, man, I know 33 last week, but if you get 4 straight weeks of that kind of offense production, this team will start really getting some chatter nationally. And obviously they're in the AP 25th this week. We'll see if that goes up. But I'm just so curious what this Michigan State team's going to look like, Madman, because as of now, and again, we haven't played them yet, but it almost seems like Purdue might actually be a better team than Michigan State, just based on resume and output. So we'll see how that looks. But any final closing thoughts on this one before we wrap up?
Yeah, it's this one. I really hope Nick Marsh plays in this game, and I hope that he's close to 100%. I think it's sort of doubtful of both of those things being true, because I think the combination of Shields being a mobile quarterback, and this could have potentially been that first game that SC would have had to deal with 2 weapons on the outside, and that could have really been a really nice barometer for this secondary. And, Nick Marsh, bigger guy, 6'3", 205, that classic Big Ten possession receiver. And then you got Omari Kelly on the other side, at 6 feet, 188. Both of those guys are kind of co-receiver number ones, and would have loved to have seen, Nicholson on one side, and then that combination of Conley, Marcellus Williams, and DJ Harvey on the other side to really have a nice barometer. Nick Marsh sits out, D-Nick is going to be on Omari Kelly, and it feels almost like a wasted opportunity for this particular secondary. And I know you like Conley, Ryan, and I'm in the minority here, but my guy actually is DJ Harvey. And I know that he's, been slow to adopt the system. We've had some busts early, but I am banking on his experience being a senior and learning this offense and this system moving forward to provide the most consistency on the back end of this schedule. Because I love Marcellus Williams. I think the upside is super high. He's going to be a star. Same thing with Conley. But my fear when you're putting a freshman, in one case, redshirt freshman out there, you're going to have a lot of ebbs and flows. And to me, I'd rather see some busts early and you tighten it up, because those are correctable things in coaching. Those are concepts. Those are reps. There's just a comfort and a familiarity. Where I get nervous is when guys are consistently just getting beat by 15 yards, 15 yards, 15 yards. To me, that's a bigger structural issue than, the occasional bust. So I know folks are, everyone's kind of got their pick on who that other corner is going to be. I really like DJ Harvey, and it's a shame that we don't get to test it out this week, given the Nick Marsh injury situation. But, nevertheless, the schedule certainly tightens up moving forward. So let's take the reprieve when we can get it. Fully expect the Trojans to be 4-0 heading into Illinois week.
Yeah, and if, as you said, if Nick Marsh does not go, then the test should be whoever that second corner is, like, shut down.
Exactly.
No yardage. If there's their wide receiver 3 or 4 or whatever they're going against, that there should be no busts, no gimmies on that if you're going up against that. So that will be the barometer on that if he is unable to go. So, well, there you have it. So we will see you all at 8 p.m. at the Collie. Hopefully that place is packed and popping. Should be a lot of fun. Should be a beautiful evening, as always, here in Los Angeles in the late summer, early fall. So thank you all for hanging out with us. Thanks to Sleeper for sponsoring the program. Everyone have a fantastic rest of your week, and we'll see you all on Saturday. For the Madman, I'm Ryan. Everyone be well, be safe. Thanks as always, and fight on.